Tonight, we are delighted to welcome an outstanding and homegrown social entrepreneur, Debs Carter. Debs is on a mission to enable people to tell and hear real-life stories through her social enterprise, Touch Network. Touch supports people to tell and hear stories of moving forwards with life's challenges. Run in relaxed places like coffee shops and bars, Touch has enabled over 80 people to tell their personal stories and over 1,000 people to hear them, leading to a more hopeful and inspired community. Debs also works with the NHS and social care to ensure patient stories are at the heart of healthcare provision. Debs shares her own story of moving forward with severe depression a lot, and we're going to be hearing about that tonight as well. Debs recently undertook a research project with Health for Southampton on behalf of Southampton Clinical Commissioning Group called Ideas for Wellbeing, where she and her team worked with nearly 800 people in the Southampton area to find out what helps them have better days. Debs often acts as a sounding board to healthcare professionals who are developing co-production approaches in their work. She also works with boards, sharing her own story of overcoming and her experiences of being in the NHS and social care. Debs previously ran a third sector management business. She has a degree in social policy from here, University of Southampton. She's a fellow of the School for Social Entrepreneurs, and she completed the Leadership for Empowered Health Communities program 2 years ago. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the stage my friend, the brilliant Debs Carter.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming out tonight and coming to hear me. I have to confess, my first slide, not sure you're going to like this, but, oh, where's it gone? Ooh. Sorry, did I press the, 1 second. Sorry, it's that one, isn't it? There we go. Okay. Imposter syndrome. I have a sense of imposter syndrome standing here. Just so you all know, doesn't go away when you get older. I feel like I do my thing. And if that's interesting to you guys, that's fantastic. But for me, it's just doing my thing. And actually coming out and talking about these things is quite challenging for me because it takes a bit of courage when you just feel like you're doing your thing. So I just want to get that out there so you all know I feel like an imposter, but I hope there is something that you can take away from tonight. So this was me as a teenager, really. I spent many years in hospital. Psychiatric hospitals for severe depression. So grew up in a troubled family really, and ended up when I was about 15 with a number of psychosomatic symptoms. I struggled to walk and ended up in a wheelchair for quite a long time. Life was really hard, and throughout my teenage years I was in and out of hospital, just struggling, feeling pretty desperate, pretty lonely, pretty isolated amongst a crowd of people. I felt like I was the only one experiencing depression. I felt like it's just me who experiences this, and I had some difficult thoughts, some intrusive thoughts, and I really felt that no one else on the planet experienced those, and it was just me. And as a result of that, I really hated myself with a passion. So it was pretty difficult, and I became, after many years in hospital, I became probably one of the most expensive patients to the NHS in the country, I would imagine. And I was actually very privileged to live in a therapeutic community in London. And I lived there for 2 years, which was an NHS kind of offered community where people like me who cost the NHS a lot of money were basically thrown in together to say, you sort it out. So we kind of did. I mean, that's a very simplistic version. They'd say it was much more therapeutic than that. But we all lived in this giant hospital together, and we were asked to take responsibility for the community and take responsibility for ourselves and each other. And it was the most challenging thing I have ever done in my life, to reflect on myself, reflect on what was going on inside me, to reflect on my thoughts, and also to be challenged by what were becoming to be my friends and my peers, the other people in the hospital. And what I saw was that their story mattered. I could see these people who were becoming my friends, that what they had to say was really important, and that what they had to say really connected with me. And slowly but surely, they started to tell me some of the thoughts that they had in their head. And for me, it was a lifeline. I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm not the only one who thinks these things. And it opened the door for me to start talking. And I guess there was one young woman in particular who I will never forget, who actually told me what she talked about with her therapist, which I don't know if any of you guys or any of your friends are in counselling, but that's not really done. You don't talk about that. But she actually told me some of the things she said. And for me, that changed everything, because if she could say it out loud, then maybe I could too. So I learned that their story mattered, and I learned that they were okay. Like, they had good and bad bits, and yes, living in a community together, I was very aware of their difficult bits, and they were very aware of mine. But I got strength from them having the courage to be able to start talking, and I learned that their story mattered and my story mattered. So together, we kind of figured it out, and it gave me the freedom to start to talk and start to move forward. Wasn't easy. It was a big challenge to be brave enough to start to kind of be open about your vulnerabilities and these kind of thoughts that go on in your head. But I did it, and I started to feel much, much better when I kind of opened up and started to tell people about myself. So this is kind of a bit ironic, but when I left the hospital, I was feeling much better, and actually came down to Southampton University for my first day at university, which was 2001. So I left the hospital on a Sunday, came down here on a Monday. Here I was suddenly at Southampton University, having been an inpatient in a hospital in London for 2 years. So yeah, arrived here, was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? But I did it. I got through it. It was pretty hard. But I did it. I took a couple of years out during my degree, because although I was getting much better and I was much more aware of my depression and my vulnerabilities, I kind of still struggled with being tripped up every now and again, and I ended up taking a couple of years out and then coming back to uni. So we got through it with a lot of help from the university and the doctor's surgery. We kind of got through it. And then I eventually left university, after 5 years here, and went on to the working world, I guess. I did various things, so worked with a homeless charity and management consultancy and all that kind of stuff. So I did that for a number of years, and throughout this time my depression was still there, but all the time it was getting better, and the spaces between periods of illness were getting longer, and the extent of the illness weren't as bad when it did happen. So after I'd been working in management consultancy and I'd set up my own business and all that stuff, I decided I wanted to be kind of all of me in my offering to the world. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone, but I felt that I had a professional persona and a personal persona, and I kind of separated the two. And it wasn't helpful. It wasn't helpful for me. It wasn't kind of helpful for others either. And I kind of had learned through one job I'd done that it was okay to be you in your work. I had a particular manager who saw my story as an asset rather than something to be ashamed of. So I learned to be able to talk about it. So after a long time in management consultancy, I was like, right, I'm going to do something that is totally me. So I decided to get my depression story published as like a little novel. This is really random. So I got it published as a little novel. It was about 20 pages. It was based on my diaries from when I'd been in hospital, and I got a writer to convert it. So it was really written really nicely. And I got a front cover designed, and it was titled Debs Carter, My Story. And then I got them printed. So I sent them off to some printing company, and they arrived in this box, all these stories of Debs. I was like, oh my goodness. And then I decided, right, I'm going to send these out. So I posted them to 150 people who I felt connected to or who inspired me in some way. So some of these people were old school friends who I wasn't in touch with and hadn't been in touch with for years. Some were celebrities, some were lecturers from uni, all sorts of different people, but anyone who I felt I had some kind of connection with, and that they had offered me something. Even if I'd never met them, they'd offered me something. So I, with the book, I wrote a little handwritten letter telling them what I admired about them and why I felt I connected to them in some way. And I basically said, this is my story, what's yours? It was absolutely terrifying, because I was kind of like coming out, it was like a line in the sand, you know. Once I'd said it, it was out there. You can't take it back when you've kind of got a story and someone's read it, they know it. So yeah, that's what I did. And terrifying as it was, the result was amazing. Out of the 150 books I sent, I got probably around 90 responses, which is pretty amazing. So these came through letters, through the post. People had handwritten letters in the same way I'd written to them. It was really beautiful. And people wrote emails, people phoned me. I got in contact with people who I hadn't been in contact with for like years. My old school friends started emailing me. I was like, wow, this is amazing. But what was really amazing was that because I'd shared my story, they started to share their stories with me. And that was what was special about it. So suddenly our relationships had gone from being kind of superficial or even not there at all to something where we really kind of got each other and understood a bit of each other's background. It was inspiring, and it was an experiment. For me, it was a total experiment. I had no idea what the result would be, but I kind of took the step, and I suppose I was a bit brave in sending it out. And the response was awesome. So after that, I was like, okay, what do I do now? So this is me being truly me in all that I do, in my work, in my life. So I invited 3 mates, persuaded, one or the other, 3 mates to stand with me and share their own stories of overcoming something. So we ran an event in this particular cafe, which is in Bitton Park, if anyone knows it. And we invited lots of people. There was about 30 people there in the end. We had wine, we had nibbles, and 4 of us stood up and shared our stories publicly in front of people. So we had a good long time to talk about our stories. So we spoke for about 20 minutes each. And it was the most beautiful thing. People were connected, people got each other, people understood each other, people were making friends. We couldn't get people out of the cafe at the end of the night. It was just amazing. And I was completely blown away. The thing that blew me away, even after all my history, was that I'd kind of said my story face to face, so not in a book this time, I'd actually said it face to face, and the world didn't end. We were all still standing, we were all still talking, nothing happened. You know, sometimes you imagine like this big bolt of lightning is going to come as soon as you confess to something, but the world didn't end at all, and we had such a fabulous night. So from that, kind of fast forwarding, we now run an organisation called Touch Network. We're set up as a community interest company, which is a not-for-profit. And we run events in our community where we support and encourage local people to share their stories of overcoming. This is an example of one of the photos at our events. And people talk about all sorts. So for me, our work is about mental well-being, which isn't necessarily the same as mental health. So our work is about people moving forward with something in their life. And for me, if you don't move forward with that thing, the potential is you end up with a mental health struggle because it just goes on a downward spiral. So we've had people talk about all sorts, including, well, we had an event last night, so various people talked about various physical conditions. One lady talked about her experience of being in intensive care and how she kind of moved forward with that and set up a social enterprise as a result of her experience in intensive care. We've had people talk about family struggles, education, dyslexia, and anything in between. Physical health, mental health. People have talked explicitly about mental health. We had a chap who's a psychologist here, actually, who spoke about bipolar disorder, being a psychologist with bipolar disorder. That was pretty amazing. People have talked about eating difficulties. But what we do, we don't just say to people, can you tell your story? The work we do with them beforehand is huge. So we help people to identify the positives in their story. So it's all about how they overcome and what is amazing about them and what we can celebrate about us as human beings for getting through some really hard times in our life. I think human beings have an incredible resilience to get through the tough stuff, and that's what we're celebrating, the fact that what we have in common is resilience. There might be lots of things that are different about us, but we get through and we get up every morning and get on with life, and that sometimes, given some people's stories, is pretty awesome. So these are some pictures of our events, and as you can see, people look happy. It's not like a heavy, emotional, draining experience. It's a social night. We always have coffee and cake, sometimes wine, and people come for a good night out. This was Nazneen. She's told an amazing story about alopecia. And really touch people. This is some of our team. So there's a team of us now who work together, which is really lovely, because as a founder of an organisation, it's quite hard working by yourself. So it's been amazing to get a team of people together to help make it happen. This is an example of some of the people we've worked with over the last couple of years. So we managed to get a lottery grant for the work that we were doing, which was pretty amazing. I did a TEDx talk, which was terrifying. Ideas for Wellbeing was a big project that we did with the clinical commissioning group, and they funded us as kind of a patient representative group, I suppose, to ask our community what helps them to have better days. And that was pretty awesome. The Henry Smith charity are a very traditional philanthropic trust, and by that I mean they've been going a very long time, but they have supported us financially to keep going, which is amazing. And Healthwatch Southampton. I also did the School for Social Entrepreneurs, which is a year-long programme about how to develop a social enterprise that some of you might be interested in at some point. Serious impact. So by this, I mean big impact in terms of scale, but also deep impact. So what I feel Touch Network brings is a sense of connection, a sense of a kind of an antidote to loneliness, an antidote to the separation we may feel in the community, an antidote to that sense of kind of going round saying, I'm fine, how are you? I'm fine. It's like, let's just drop that for a minute. When you come through the doors, we know that some of us aren't fine, but that's okay. We can hang out together and we can share stories and we can get hope from one another, and that's what's really important. So for me, I do expect and hope that Touch Network has a big scale across the country, but the thing that keeps me focused and keep working on it is the sense of a deep impact in individuals and the change that happens within them. We do feedback every night after we've run an event, and the things people say about hope and not feeling alone anymore just moves me deeply, and that's the reason, I'm motivated to do this, really. So yeah, serious impact, I think. Who knows if we'll spread across the UK. Who knows? What gets me going every day is the thought that we're making a change in people's lives by enabling them to move forward just a little bit, or have a little bit of hope, or remember something of a very special night where they connected with people. Maybe it'll be in 4 years' time, 5 years' time, when they're going through something similar. We'll never really know the impact we have, but I know it's a special experience. So our next step, Tesco's, the amazing Tesco's, I've decided, have supported us financially with a significant sum for a very small organisation to branch out across Hampshire, Dorset and Wiltshire. So our plan over the next year, which is quite scary, is to run 50 events in 50 locations across the south of England, which will be incredible, and we're going to make it happen, and it's going to be special. So I guess my final thoughts, and this is going back to me with my imposter syndrome experience of feeling, be brave, take risks, have courage and seek adventure. And I guess for me, that's everything. That's what Touch Network is about every day. I'll be honest with you, pretty much every day is terrifying because you don't know what's going to happen. It's innovative, it's new, it's sharing my personal story, it's being vulnerable, it's working with a team. But if you're brave and you take risks, like I think I have done a little bit, good things can happen. So that's what I'm determined to keep going. And even coming here is kind of being a bit brave and taking a bit of a risk. So yeah, that's what I'd encourage. So yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, that would be a fantastic way to end, actually. But we're not at the end. We're only halfway through. So thank you very much, Debs. It's an amazing story. I'm going to keep it on this slide. So I've got some questions for you before we hand over to our audience. So my first question is, if you could make one class in university compulsory for all students, what class would that be?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Emotional intelligence, social skills. So yeah, I guess without a doubt for me, it's emotional intelligence, social skills, being able to make conversation with people, being able to be polite, being confident enough to shake someone's hand when you meet them, having the ability to manage a diary, for example, the ability to pick up the phone and phone someone. I had someone phone me this week to arrange a meeting, and it was really interesting. I was thinking about this. I was thinking, if that person had emailed me to arrange a meeting, I don't think I would have got back to her very quickly. If I had, it probably would have been in January. But because this person had the confidence and bravery to pick up the phone, say, "Hi Debs, really interested in meeting you," I was like, yeah, cool, let's meet next week. And I think it's things like that. It's that ability to connect with people that the better we get at that is like, it's more than the icing on the cake. For me, it's the essence of work and moving into employment. It's obvious that people who've got a degree or been to university are pretty intelligent. Fine, that's given. But for me, the thing that makes people special is their ability to communicate and their in-depth understanding of themselves and reflection on themselves, being able to learn and develop and know that they haven't got all the answers and be okay with that. Be okay to say, I'm feeling like an imposter. That's pretty cool, like to be open about that and honest, but still show some dignity in it all. And just being able to connect with people, I think, is the most important thing. And the more that could be taught at university, the better, and the more equipped people will be to get into jobs and working world.
Brilliant, thanks Debs. And a great message to all of our students here. It's the one thing that they should work on, right? Nice segue onto my next question. So you graduated from University of Southampton 17 years ago, 2001?
I haven't counted.
You haven't counted. Sorry to bring it up. What's been the role of the university in your personal and professional development?
Okay, so I studied sociology and social policy at university. It was massive for me, coming to university was massive. Being independent was massive. Living by myself. I had lived by myself before from the age of 16, but actually living by myself in a more positive way was really important to me. Friendships, really important, being able to navigate those. I guess I developed some skills around, I suppose it was leadership, dare I say it, but I used to get my mates together, and we called them study buddy sessions, and we used to book the rooms in the library and all sit there all day doing our work together, and we'd all sit and we'd all doing different subjects, but we'd spend time together just motivating each other and connecting. And I think my ability to bring people together in that way is kind of what I do now, actually. I don't think my mates would have been up for that had I not been present on that and organised that and made that happen. So that was really important. I think learning about who I am, what I have to offer, building my confidence, absolutely massive. And obviously healthcare provision was important in Southampton for me to look after my depression. I should say as well, I do still have depression, so it's not something that is gone. It is something I struggle with now. It's just not as massive in my life as it was, but it is still something I struggle with. I'm not saying I'm all sorted, everything's fine, because it's not, but I get up every day and carry on regardless, I guess. And that I learnt at university, I think, with the support of tutors and my friends. My friends were pretty amazing. At the time, I struggled with my wobbly legs, as I described, where I couldn't walk. And my friends were just brilliant at university and just stood by me, and we joked about it and we got through it together somehow. And I built some really good relationships with my tutors, and that was really positive. So I guess for me, it's all the things surrounding academia that were so important. The education, the learning was important to me. I was pretty passionate about social policy, and I guess kind of where I'm at now fits kind of in line with social policy. But the academic bit was more of a structure and a focus rather than giving me everything I needed to move on in my life.
Brilliant. And on that point, you talked about the value of that, of your degree and the experience. Did you realise the value straight afterwards while you were in the middle of it, or did it take a bit of time for you to reflect and then in retrospect realise that value? And what would you suggest to all the students here who are, I guess, going through those experiences? How did they get to appreciate the value of the university experience?
I guess for me, it was a struggle, university. I did my best. I worked really hard, given everything that was going on for me. Looking back, I'm blown away by myself in a way for how focused I was on getting my degree. But I think, I don't know. I think it's on reflection for me that I realised the value of university, and I realised the value of the opportunities outside of the study. I think I was very conscientious. I focused on my study mostly. I didn't really get involved in groups and societies and sport and all those kind of things, not very much. I wish I had, but I couldn't. I just had too much on my plate. But I think if I was a student again, I'd take every opportunity there was, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this at the University of Southampton, but I would chill out a bit about the academic stuff and think about, sorry.
No, carry on.
I would chill out a bit. I'd do my best, but I'd take advantage of all the other things that are on offer in this amazing place. And you won't know the value of that until you've moved on and you look back and you compare yourself to other people you're working with, and you think, actually, I am a whole person, an enhanced person for the value of all of the experiences at university, not just one element.
Thank you very much. With entrepreneurship, we think about success a lot. We talk about it a lot, but we don't talk about failure so much. So from your life, is there one moment of adversity or failure that when you look back on, you're grateful because it was a catalyst in some way for you?
That's a really interesting question. I think I would describe my moment of failure, I might not use that word, but that kind of sense, as my illness, actually. I'm not saying it's failure, but at the time in it, it feels like that. It feels like I have messed up again. Here I am in hospital. Oh my goodness, it's all gone wrong. And it feels so dreadful and so intense. In fact, I'll be honest with you, even this summer in July to August, I was in hospital, in a mental health hospital for my depression. In the midst of Touch Network and all the great things, I still have depression, and I was very, very ill. And at the time, it felt like failure. It felt awful, but with hindsight now, I'm back to my sparkly, I hope, normal self. And I think, in a weird kind of way, it keeps me grounded. It keeps me in touch with those dark feelings and that sense of struggle and battle. I'm not wishing it on myself, but it enables me to be authentic and real and honest and connect with people. So my speakers don't very often say, oh yeah, it's totally sorted out now, it's all finished, and here I am standing strong. Pretty much, I don't think we've had any speaker who said that. And I think it's the same for me. It's not all finished, but I have moved forward, and I think I can relate to everyone involved in Touch Network because I'm still kind of in it in a way. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Last question from me for now. You talk about the power of storytelling. Could you give us a recent example from your own life?
Yeah, sure. So obviously we have all the events and all that, but there is another part of my work that was mentioned in the bio, and that's the work with the NHS. So I feel very passionate that stories is a way to connect with one another. And actually, if we put down our professional persona or guard or however you describe it, and actually listen to one another and connect, that can bring about change because it can bring about motivation. So when I was in hospital this summer, I wrote a journal of my experiences, and I recorded in an objective way, as much as I could, what was happening, my experience in the hospital, the service I was getting, the way people treated me, the response I was getting. And I recorded it in this, I got an app. I don't know quite where I found the motivation to do this because I was pretty ill, but I did it anyway, and it was quite long, it was about 80 pages. When I came out of hospital, I got it graphically designed, so it was easy to read and kind of set up as a PDF. And I sent it to the board of the hospital by email, said, don't want to make a complaint or anything, but this is my experience in hospital. Just want to share it with you so you can hear it from on the ground, because you won't know what it feels like to be in hospital. So I sent it to them, and the result of it was an invitation to spend an hour and a half with the board of this mental health trust and share my story and my experiences. And it was the most amazing thing. I felt like I was offering something, and the board connected with my story and me on a deep level. You could hear a pin drop, like they were totally like just in it, on it, in a way that if we talked about strategy and direction and all that stuff about NHS systems, it's okay, it's important, but it's not the same as connecting from a heart level. And I think it's fair to say that I don't think they'll ever forget that experience. And I hope it was helpful. So I think storytelling can be really powerful.
Excellent. Great. Great to hear about the power of storytelling and telling your own story. So important. All right. Well, that's all the questions that we have. Now it's open to you. So if you have any questions, could you please raise your hand? Yes. Right, so the question was, do you think there is a safe space or a space for patients to disclose their experiences to staff? And do you think it's beneficial?
Yeah, so I think you were talking about staff disclosing. it was that relation, that dynamic, wasn't it?
Right.
Really, really interesting and very, very much in conversation at the moment amongst all the health authorities, talking about where they have this thing called peer support, where it's kind of the designated person who is allowed to open up and disclose their own story because they are what's called a peer support worker. I don't know the answer to that. In my personal opinion, I think there is something about not labelling one person amongst a whole team as the person with experience in having a story, because in my opinion, everyone has a story, and it's about being able to share something of that in an appropriate way. So what I'd like to see, I had this idea about this, is that staff members within trusts, NHS trusts, wore a badge, if they chose to, that says, ask me about my lived experience, whether that be a doctor, a nurse, a cleaner, an administrator, but a kind of anyone, whether they have a mental health story or a story of overcoming something, was able to be supported to be able to share that story if the patient so asked for that. I think there is something about boundaries, and sometimes you can feel overwhelmed by other people's stories, but if a patient is saying, I'd really like to hear a bit about what you went through, I think that could be incredibly helpful and help reduce the stigma of like, there's a section of people with a story and with mental health difficulties, and then there's a larger section that don't have that. They don't experience it. I think actually the fact is we all experience struggles, and that can be helpful to one another. So why make it such a big deal out of it in a way? Like, if we had this badge that said, ask me, I think that'd be pretty cool. So yeah, that's where I sit on that.
We have time for one more question. Lady over there.
I was wondering, because you mentioned that you always help people to find the positives in their stories, and I was wondering if some people find it empowering to focus more on the negatives, or that it involves some kind of acceptance. I was wondering.
Interesting. I guess maybe being short of time, I didn't explore that in detail, but it's a really good question. I guess what we as an organisation do is support people to express the challenges and the difficulties, but look for their inner strength in it. And yes, some people are in a difficult place and feel like there aren't any strengths, there aren't any moving forward, it's kind of just rubbish. And yes, totally, I hear that, totally hear that. And there is a space for expressing that, definitely, and that is the right thing for some people. I guess the social enterprise that I run isn't necessarily that space. So what I'd do if there was someone in that situation is they'd be more than welcome. It would be amazing for them to come and be part of what we do, but I'd probably suggest that maybe they paused on sharing their story at that point and chatted with maybe some of the support groups or some other kind of support or help they might get to work through that to a point that they feel a bit more positive about it. Because I think most people do get to a place of being able to reflect and see at least some elements of positive or learning or development. Certainly my experience, and this is just kind of my life experience, I suppose, the people I've chatted to who share their stories, I don't think I've come across anyone who can't cite one thing that feels positive out of it. Is that?
Great, thank you. Well done, Debs. You answered some pretty difficult questions there, but we saved the most difficult question for last.
Right.
What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Ooh. Chill out, probably. Yeah, sorry. I guess at 20, I was at university. I was a bit of a perfectionist. I set the bar very high, was working towards that continuously, and put massive pressure on myself, and also took the opportunity to pick up the biggest stick possible and just beat myself at every opportunity, in the sense of just having a go at everything I did. Just kind of, you didn't do that right, you didn't do this right. I think I'd say to myself now, chill out and think about what you did do. Think about the things you did achieve today. Life's hard sometimes, and getting out of bed can be an achievement. So congratulate yourself for that, rather than all the million and one things that you didn't do. Think about the positives and think about what you did do. You're all right, basically. I'm okay. I think I'd tell myself that. You're okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Debs. So, can we have a final round of applause for Debs Carter, everyone?